2023 was an amazing year for anime, in my opinion, one of the best ever. It felt like every season was better than the last, and there were a ton of great shows this past year. Today we're going to go over what I think were the 10 best shows of the year, and who better to talk about the best anime from the past year than the guy who watches every seasonal. Now, there were so many great shows this year, there's almost infinite ways that you can craft this list, so don't feel offended if I leave out a show that you loved. Chances are I liked it too, but there's only 10 spots here. Also, sequels are eligible for this list, unlike my seasonal previews. And a big disclaimer, because I know some people are going to ask, but I'm not putting continuing shows like Frieren and Kusuria because they aren't finished, so those will actually be eligible for next year, because it doesn't really make sense to evaluate something if it's not done yet. But everyone knows those are great, so go out and watch them anyway. With that out the way, let's get right into it. So starting us off at number 10 is a show that really came out of nowhere and made me fall in love with it, Kamikatsu. I'm pretty sure I mentioned this one at length back in my spring what to watch video, but what really stood out for me with this one is the world building and lore. It starts off as a generic isekai fantasy world, but as the first episode unfolds, we learn that there's a much more sinister and dark undertone, with humans being raised as cattle for sacrifice without emotions and sex drives. It also separates itself by having a world with no concept of religion or magic. This means the protagonist has to use his interpersonal skills to get anything done. He's not your usual overpowered fantasy main character. His strength is in the relationships that he can build. We also get introduced to this lolly goddess who the main character wants to build a religion around, because in this world, the more followers and worshippers you have, the more powerful you become. So kind of think of it like Aqua from Konosuba, but on crack. This one was hilarious, had so many good plot twists and reveals, and a genuinely interesting concept that I've not seen in anime. Not to mention some of the best fan service of the year. Now, I know some of you have probably seen the god-awful CGI from this show online somewhere, and yeah, it is that bad, but I'm 99% sure that it was a creative decision. For what purpose, I don't know, but yeah, it looked really bad. But the story and characters were more than enough to make up for it for me anyway, and there was no doubt that this show would be the first on my list from the moment I saw it. Plus, Loki's hot. 2023 was an amazing year for anime in general, but the shoujo romance genre, demographic, whatever you want to call it, was very well represented this year. Niehime, or the Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts, was one of the best in my opinion. Not only did this show give us a genuinely rewarding romance, great world building, political intrigue, and action, but it also has one of the best female protagonists I've ever seen. Seraphi's ability to win over people through her resilience and determination in the face of overwhelming odds was really cool to me. So Niehime takes place in a world where the Beast Kingdom and humans live separately, and normally the humans have to pay tribute to the Beast Kingdom in the form of young girls, periodically with a ritual sacrifice. Seraphi is meant to be the latest ritual sacrifice, but she and the Beast King end up falling in love. The catch is that the king is half human himself, so Seraphi and the king have to navigate all these different political struggles, with him wanting to marry a human girl, all the while keeping a secret that he's half human himself. You've got all these different factions vying to take the throne from who they perceive as a weak king. You've got discrimination based on race and class within the kingdom itself. There's a really fleshed out world here that just blew me away. While it might seem like a Beauty and the Beast type setup, it's so much more than that. The world is very much alive and brimming with all these different characters and personalities. The king has to fend off all these threats both internally and externally, and they bring he and Seraphi closer. What I really love about this show are two things. For one, Seraphi isn't a damsel in distress waiting to be saved. There's several times throughout the show where she's kidnapped and kind of has to work her way out of things on her own because the king can't get there in time. But probably the biggest thing to me is that it has an end, which is something that we don't get a lot in anime these days. In 24 episodes, we get a full story from beginning to end that adapts an entire manga and gives us a nice resolution. I hate that this got so overshadowed because it truly was a magical experience, and without a doubt one of the best romances I've ever seen. Actually, when I was in Japan, I spent a lot of time looking for the manga, but I couldn't find it anywhere, so it seems like it did very well domestically at least, which is good. Each season of Bungo Stray Dogs has been an improvement on the last, culminating in the masterpiece that was season 5. The stakes, the tension, the action, the constant plot twist made this season the most enjoyable so far for me. Aya and Bram's budding friendship over the course of the season was a treat. Their chemistry and banter was really fun to watch, and I love how they turned a relatively unknown side character from an OVA into such a cool and important character. The whole plotline with the book that can literally rewrite reality had me on the edge of my seat in every episode. It's one of the few storylines where I legit couldn't see any way out of things for the main characters, so they managed to make things really challenging and keep us guessing throughout, which was really nice. Without a doubt, the best overall storyline the series has had. This season also kind of addressed one of my biggest issues with Bungo Stray Dogs as a whole, the main character. Asoshi still really isn't a compelling character compared to Dazai, Chuya, or Akutagawa, but I definitely have a lot more respect for him after the season, and I hope they continue to build on it. Can't forget my boy Rampo as well, who I wasn't a big fan of coming into the season, but they really fleshed out his character and took him from someone forgettable to me to one of the best characters. And there was just non-stop action in this season, so many moving pieces were introduced, and the last 2 episodes really wove them together beautifully. Unfortunately, they did end up adapting all of the current manga chapters and even went beyond where the manga was in the final episode, so it will be a very long time before we get more Bungo Stray Dogs, which kind of sucks because that finale ended on a cliffhanger and I really need more of it, but that just gives us something else to look forward to. Now, I talked about how shoujo stans ate good this year, but really romance stans in general were feasting. It almost felt like we got more romance than isekai stuff last year, which is a welcome change, but it was really hard to narrow things down to just one on this list. It basically came down to Bokuyaba, Skip to Loafer, and Kimi Somo or Insomniacs After School. After like 2 hours of debate, I ended up going with Bokuyaba, partly because this is the show I looked forward to the most on a weekly basis out of all of these, and partly because Ushio Kensuke's on the soundtrack. He's the same guy behind Koi no Katachi, Liz and the Bluebird, and Space Dandy, among others. I know when people think of anime, a lot of casuals tend to look at the animation and stuff, but the OST can really heighten moments and make them 100 times better, and we definitely saw that in this show. Already, I'm a sucker for opposites attract love story setups, so I was interested in this one from the jump, but boy, after I saw that first episode, I was really hooked. It's by Shin-A, who did Takagi-san and Kako, among others, but the staff behind this one really blew me away with the artistic direction of the show. It had a lot of that Shaft, Madoka Magica, and Monogatari feel to it with how they made such a dialogue-heavy series so interesting. I love the use of camera angles, framing, and composition of scenes in this one. Every episode had a film-like quality, which as a creative myself, I really appreciate. I saw a lot of people writing this one off on anime Twitter after one episode because of how the main character starts off kind of edgy, but they're really missing out on an amazing story. It's always great seeing a social outcast decide to better himself, and it kind of gives purpose to the story. The 2 leads have such a cute and wholesome relationship as well. It's like one of those things that's so cute you just want to bury your head in your pillow with your feet in the air. It really is a really rewarding journey seeing the 2 of them go from strangers who have nothing in common to realizing there's much more to one another than meets the eye and gradually accepting their feelings for one another. You combine that with an awesome soundtrack, gorgeous visuals, and some wonderful voice acting, and you got something special on your hands. Minor spoiler, but the first season kind of just ends as they were coming to terms with their feelings, so I'm really looking forward to the second season in 2024. Now, I've talked at length in a previous video about Mushoku Tensei Season 2 and how great it's been, which you can check out later, but having it on this list was a no-brainer. I saw it as an improvement in virtually every way over the previous seasons, and it covered one of my favorite arcs. We kind of got the third big turning point in the story, and the way they handled it in the anime was great. Yeah, there were some cuts to dialogue here and there, but you're always going to have that in an anime adaptation, so I didn't mind it too much. There were definitely some questions about the animation after the prologue OVA, but they delivered quality-wise for me. I love seeing Rudius and Sophie's relationship developing over the course of the season, and the big reveal in the last couple episodes was way better than I could have ever imagined. The cool thing about a story that follows a character's entire life like Mushoku Tensei does is that we get to see these big milestones, and it's kind of like cheering for your own friend or son. Rudius took big strides forward in this season, and even though he's still a flawed character, you see the path being laid for improvement, which is really all you can ask for as a viewer. I was definitely impressed with how Studio Bind conveyed a lot of the subtleties of the story as well, the kind of unspoken feelings and inner monologues of Rudius, which are very important to Mushoku Tensei. The world also got a lot bigger in the season, new characters being introduced and massive reveals about the truth of the teleportation incident. Like I said, as a light novel reader, I did have some minor complaints with some cuts and stuff, and Rudy is not looking as old as he does in the light novel. But for the most part, I came away satisfied and felt that this was easily one of the 10 best shows of the year, and I'm really excited for part 2 coming up in 2024. Now, number 5 on my list was really difficult to pick. I spent about an hour and a half going back and forth between Tengoku Daimakyo and Watakon or Heavenly Delusion and My Happy Marriage, and I ultimately went with Tengoku just because the story that we got in this season of Tengoku last year I think was ultimately better than the 12 episodes of Watakon that we had, but both are amazing shows that should be watched, so definitely make sure you check out both of them. I'm also biased to Ushio Kensuke, who we talked about with Bokuyaba. He did the OST for Tengoku as well, and the sci-fi post-apocalyptic journey that the 2 leads go on in this one is really appealing to me as well. This was one of the hardest shows for me to watch in terms of not going out and getting the manga ASAP. I usually wait till the end of a show to read the manga or light novel just so I can get two unique experiences, but it took all of my willpower for this show. There's just so much mystery, so many twists and WTF moments in this that every episode had me craving more. The whole split timeline storytelling method was great too because it made me consistently question what happened to get things to where they are in the present. I think the first episode was also one of the best that I've ever seen. Production IG did a great job with the direction on this one, building tension in each episode, and the subtle storytelling methods in place of overt storytelling was a welcome surprise too. I'm a big fan of anime that kind of go with the show don't tell approach, and this show really did that well. There's still so many questions that I have about this world, the kids we saw in the school, what exactly happened to mess the world up in present day, the body switching stuff. The author of this one was in his bag for sure, and I really need a second season of this, but I will for sure be reading the manga in the meantime. Not only did Undead Girl Murder Farce give us a banger K-pop opening, we really need more K-pop groups doing anime openings by the way, but it's also the best mystery anime that I've ever seen. This year was actually really good for mystery anime since we had Kyoku Siri Season 2, we had Kama no Hoshiran, and of course Undead Girl Murder Farce, but Undead Girl was easily the best for me. What made it so great for me was the character interactions. The main trio really bounced off each other so well, and the seiyus made it even better by bringing a playful enthusiasm to every line. I love the whole journey across Europe to find Aya's body quest. I'm a sucker for stories where characters go on these long journeys with other people and get closer and all that good stuff. And then you throw in the whole Mariety House of M plotline and the other mystical stuff in the show, and you got a recipe for something really good. The cases were really good to me as well. The biggest challenge for these case solving anime is making sure that the cases aren't predictable or boring, and they really hit the nail on the head with this one. Every case had multiple twists that kept me guessing and second guessing until the culprit was revealed. Aya's mind games with people and her constant banter with Sugaru, the deadpan humor from Shizuku, it was just all great. There was never a dull moment in this one, unlike the other two mystery shows that aired this year where I damn near fell asleep at some points. And this actually was the show that I ended up looking forward to the most every week in summer. Every episode went by so quickly despite it being mainly dialogue based, which is just a testament to the direction and the job that the seiyus did. And I like how the studio mixed in a lot of cool camera angles and played with composition to create the impression of action, even when the characters are just standing still. Like Bokuyaba, this one also has Shaft vibes at times, which really helped. Whenever you have a dialogue heavy series, you've got to have ways to kind of keep your audience engaged, and I really think that the staff with this one did an amazing job. There's some surprisingly good Saga as well. It's just a really good anime that I desperately need more of. I searched all over in Japan for the novels, but sadly couldn't find them anywhere. And someone ended up telling me that the author apparently self-publishes them, so you can only buy them from his Amazon storefront. So I'm definitely gonna have to try to do that in the future for sure. Now it's hard to believe that it's been almost a year to the day that Onimai came out. Mushoku got all the hype, but in my opinion, this was the best studio buying show of the year. I know it's crazy, but I did do a video about it last year, which you can go check out. It was actually one of the best performing on my channel somehow, but this show was amazing. It may seem like a lolicon and pure fan servicey show on the surface, but there's a very pure and wholesome story here that I really enjoyed. Great characters, art, and some of the best titty animation you'll see in your life. Onimai was a perfect blend of comedy and surprisingly deep moments. I loved Mahiro and Mihari's relationship, and it was nice seeing Mahiro go from this socially awkward shut-in with no friends to being the center of her own little friend group. Yeah, some people will complain about Mihari transforming her brother into a cute anime girl, but I think that's a small price to pay for totally revamping his life. The Hot Springs finale episode was legitimately one of the most well-directed episodes of the year too. Everyone gasses up Bocchi the Rock as the best thing since sliced bread, but I see a lot of those same themes in Onimai, and I actually think Onimai does a lot of them better. This was such a blast to watch. I picked up a few of the manga volumes in Japan, and I can't wait to read it. I would love another season of this from Studio Bind once they finish up with Mushoku's next season. Now you know we gotta have it on this list. Oshi no Ko was a cultural reset, a moment in history, arguably the greatest first episode of all time and the most iconic OP ever. I know some people are gonna crucify me for that in the comments like, oh bro, what about Cruel Angel's Thesis? Well look, Cruel Angel's Thesis ain't never hit Billboard #1, okay? The stratosphere of popularity that Oshi no Ko reached is actually hard to describe. It was everywhere, and not even just in Japan. This broke into the mainstream in the West, and for good reason. It's a damn good story with awesome characters. It sheds a lot of light light on the Japanese entertainment industry, and it has a lot of real world takeaways. You combine that with the comedy, the waifus, Pieyon, and you got a generational series. What's crazy is that we got all this hype for what amounts to the intro of the story. The best parts of Oshi no Ko are still a ways off, so I can't wait to see what happens when we get there. The best girl debates in season 2 or 3 are going to be insane. Dagakobo really cooked up something so special with the art, the direction, and the feel of the series, not just bringing the series to life, but enhancing it in many ways. The first 10 chapters or so, for example, which were the basis for the first episode, were so much better in anime form, making that ending hit a lot harder and that much more heartbreaking. I think the best anime are the ones that could take what was an amazing manga already and create a unique experience where even fans who have read feel like they're getting something new. Hats off to Dagakobo. I had no doubt that they would do this series justice from the beginning, and they exceeded even my wildest expectations. And rounding off everything, my pick for anime of the year goes to Vinland Saga Season 2. Vinland Saga is one of the few manga I read and one of my favorite stories of all time. I've been reading it for like 6-7 years now. After season 1's crazy action and thrills, I really wondered how the reaction would be to the much slower paced Farmland Saga arc, especially after the studio change, and wow, I mean, I could not be happier with how things turned out. I give Mappa a lot of shit for how they treat their employees, and rightfully so, but they cooked with this one. It seems like the general consensus among anime fans is that this season was way better than season 1, which made me really happy. The first season of Vinland Saga is the prologue, and it really isn't until this latest season that the story really gets going, with Thorfinn becoming a pacifist and making amends for his sins. The Farmland arc is Thorfinn finding purpose in life after everything that happened in season 1. He's a lost, broken soul who's confined by the chains of his past, but with the help of Einar, he begins to take strides forward again. The end of season 1 with all the Askeladd stuff, where Thorfinn is so shocked to see Askeladd die before he can kill him, and you literally see the life drain from Thorfinn's eyes and lose all desire to live. That always hit me as such a powerful moment because I try to put myself in these scenarios. Imagine watching your dad die and then you train your entire life for an opportunity for revenge, and even that's taken away from you. Season 2 is satisfying because it looks like we're watching a man be born again right in front of our eyes. Thorfinn realizing the mistakes he's made in the past. We see war go from being this idealized thing that's cool and heroic like season 1 into something to be feared and avoided at all costs. I love the juxtaposition of Thorfinn and Omar, seeing characters like Snake, Thorgil, and others animated, and of course that reunion between Thorfinn and Canute. This season really just hit me on a profound emotional level that very few anime do. That reunion episode being the first time in a while where I cried, not because something was sad, but because of how beautiful it was. Legitimately one of the best anime episodes of all time. What Vinland Saga Season 2 lacked in action, it made up for in character development and drama. This type of characterization doesn't come around often in this medium, so when it does, it deserves to be praised. And I have to give respect where it's due with this one. Mappa actually cooked. Anime of the year, no doubt. Now, these were my top 10 anime of 2023, but remember, I watch over 150 shows per year, so my top 10 is a lot harder to make than someone who just watches 20 or 30 shows a year, or maybe even less than that, like the average person, meaning there's inevitably some really good stuff that I left out. That doesn't mean I didn't think they were great or anything. There's just only 10 spots on this list, and I couldn't talk about everything or we'd be talking all day. That said, I do want to take a moment and just give a few honorable mentions to some shows that didn't quite make this list, but were great nonetheless and deserve some love. First of which being Buddy Daddies, one of the best anime original shows ever. PA Works can kind of be hit or miss with their anime original stuff, but they really hit the ball out the park with this one. If you're a fan of stuff like Spy Family, imagine that, but with two dudes parenting instead and a little girl who can't read minds. I loved Miri, Rei, and Kazuki's dynamic, and every episode was a blast. There's great action, emotional story beats, and a really wholesome family building setup that makes this one a must watch. Plus, it's one of the few anime originals that actually sticks the landing and has a satisfactory ending for everyone. It wasn't exactly underrated because it does have over an 8 on my anime list and a lot of people watched it, but still, I think it got overshadowed because it aired earlier in the year and so much other stuff came out, so I had to give that a shout out. Now, Dark Gathering is another one that I went back and forth about including on here. Ultimately, I really just couldn't justify it over the other 10 shows. I love it, but I just love these a tiny bit more. And also these lists change a lot depending on my mood too. So I think it's the best horror Japanese mystical anime ever though. I did a video talking about it more in detail earlier in the year, so check that one out. But Yayoi, Keitaro, and Eiko are one of my favorite trios in anime, and I really hope we get to see another season, especially with that Kyoto arc that they teased at the end of the first season animated. I learned a lot about Japanese supernatural legends from this one, and I was legitimately jump scared several times throughout the show, which is a first for anime. So it's definitely, for me, the GOAT horror anime right now. High Card is a show that I don't think I've seen anyone on YouTube mention, so I definitely had to shout it out. It actually aired during the same season as Buddy Daddies and got quite slept on. It's almost like a Kingsman style setup that takes place in an alternate universe London, and the characters get these abilities from playing cards. There's a secret organization going around after all the cards, and the government has their own task force to prevent them from falling into the wrong hands. It's a really cool show with great character designs and an interesting world. It's got a season 2 coming up this year as well, I believe this season, so I'm really excited to see that as well, and highly recommend people check that out. Migi Todali is probably one of the most bizarre shows that I've ever seen, and I mean that in the best way possible. It's utterly deranged and unhinged, but in a great way. 2 twin orphans get adopted and they pretend to be the same person. There's a lot of wacky moments with the 2 of them going to lengths to not get caught, and they begin to uncover the dark truth about their mom's death in the process. It's by the same author as Sakamoto-san Desuka, who sadly passed away from breast cancer last year, so she never got to see this animated, but they did it justice, and I can't recommend it enough. Jigokuroku is, in my opinion, the best mappa shonen product. I normally trash on shonen, but this one was actually good, so I gotta praise them. I know a lot of people complain about the art and some other technical stuff, but I actually like that it doesn't look like a carbon copy of Mappa's other Jump productions. Chainsaw Man and JJK are done by the same team, for example, and they just really don't have any originality between the 2 of them in terms of their look. I know that was one of the big complaints that Chainsaw Man fans had about the adaptation. So seeing a new art style was refreshing. If you look at the art of the Jigokuroku manga, it is really nice. So it is cool to see something that kind of captures that flair. The story of being on this mystical island home to monsters and gods and a battle royale survival island type setup was great, and Gabumaru is one of my favorite new main characters of the year. Not to mention Shina Ringo's banger opening. I think if the staff who worked on this one get more time, they will really be able to cook up something special for this next season. And okay, there you have it. I know it's been kind of a long video, but there was a lot of anime to talk about from this past year. So much good stuff came out. I think it was probably my favorite year of watching seasonal anime ever. Could be recency bias, but that's genuinely how I feel right now. But 2024 looks like it's gonna be even crazier. I always have so much fun making these videos, and if you have fun watching them, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more anime content. I've got the winter 2024 what to watch video coming soon, as well as much more on the channel. We're a few subs away from 1,000. Thank you so much to everyone who supported me in 2023, and here's to a great 2024 for all of us. Happy New Year, everyone. See y'all on the next one.